So the Paul Ricard circuit readies itself for the race. And a very warm welcome to the Paul Ricard circuit here in the south of France for the opening round of the 2015 International GTOpen. It feels like it's been far too long a winter's break, and we have got 70 minutes of pulsating action to look forward to this afternoon, the first of 14 races spread across 7 events this season. Well, it's a very warm welcome from myself, Ben Evans, to the Paul Ricard circuit, which has been shrouded in cloud for most of the day, and that continues to be the case as the rain is in fact starting to fall just as the cars are coming to the grid. Well, I blame the graphics man for putting the picture of the sun on the weather then, because the heavens have literally opened just this second. Our commentary box overlooking the grid. And this is the very last thing that the drivers need at the start of the season, is a little bit of a snap shower. We've had the inclemency all the way through the day. It was a damp qualifying session earlier on for the cars, and it's potentially going to be a race of changeable weather conditions. Got a very, very high quality entry in this year's International GTOpen. Maybe 1 or 2 cars down where we'd hope we'd be for this weekend. We've got 6 or 7 more joining us for Estoril in a fortnight's time. But a very competitive entry, some very quick cars, rapid driver combinations, and 1 or 2 standout stars as well to look forward to, particularly Alvaro Parente alongside Miguel Ramos in the new Teo Martin Racing McLaren. And we understand that they will be bringing a sister car to Estoril. Well, the pit lane is open for 10 minutes because we had the wet qualifying earlier on to give the drivers more time to acclimatise. And as you can see from Mauro Calamir's Maserati, track conditions are a little bit treacherous, but almost as soon as that rain started to fall, it's stopped again. The circuit is swathed in dark clouds, and what we've as well been having, because it's a large facility, this Paul Ricard circuit, is that it's been raining on some sections of the circuit but not others. There we catch a glimpse of Alessandro Balzan and Nicola Benucci's Villorba course Ferrari. All new driver lineup for Villorba course this year. It's Alessandro Balzan, who former Grand Am GT champion, who is starting the race. Just an opportunity to get a little bit of heat into his new for 2015 Michelin tyres, because as you can see from that shot of the Mistral Straight, whilst there is a little bit of precipitation, it is still a nice and mild day in terms of temperature here. And so unless the rain really starts to come down heavily, the track will probably remain dry, a little bit greasy, and any surface fluid will burn off fairly rapidly. So Balzan has got the windscreen wiper at full chat as he gingerly picks his way around to the grid. Of course, when we do get going, meanwhile, oh dear me, and that is Claudio Sadanovic in the AF Course Ferrari, having a little bit of a spin on the way to the grid. Of course, he's an illustrious company, isn't he? Because we saw Gerhard Berger doing that once on the sighting lap at the San Marino Grand Prix going back about 20 or so years ago. When we do get underway, of course, it is a 70-minute race. There is that mandatory pit stop and driver change that comes once we're 28 minutes in the race until we are 42 minutes in the race. So that is, as ever, the point at which the race gets turned on its head a little bit. So the track has been declared wet, although the rain, certainly outside the commentary box overlooking the start and finish straight, has stopped falling almost as quickly as it arrived. I think the drivers could still be easily caught out with a slippery circuit and cold tyres. So a little bit of deliberation possibly for some of the squads. Do they risk starting on wets? Probably not. They're going to have to be taking care on dry tyres. One or two of them may gamble with a mixture of the two, as Balzan picks his way down the grid to his pole position. Vlorba course, squad of course, champions in the International GTOpen back in 2013, Andrea Montermini. Well, this year we haven't got, of course, the Super GT cars, so it is a championship for all GT3s. So you've got that equivalency of competition, although you may well have seen the press release that came through overnight about the introduction of the new Cup class. It's going to be from the third round of the season onwards at Silverstone, which is going to be for the cars that compete in championships such as the Lamborghini Super Trofeo, Porsche Carrera Cup cars, and also the various Ferrari challenges as well, which is a really interesting and I'm sure popular addition to the International GTOpen Championship. Second on the grid then, it is Miguel Ramos and Alvaro Parent in the Teo Martin Motorsport car, and it should be Ramos who is taking the start. And there we see the start has been delayed by 10 minutes just to give us an opportunity, I think, to allow the weather to make its mind up one way or the other what it's going to do. So that means the car's up on the air jacks, just opportunity to make one or two last minute checks to the machinery. There is Nicola Benucci readying himself to take over later on in the race. It's been a long winter of testing. So the grid formed, lots of the mechanics just making the various checks to the machineries. And there is Alvaro Parent, the 2005 British Formula 3 champion, who has been hugely successful in pretty much everything he's ever competed in. Also the Formula Renault 3.5 champion of 2007. And he just gives a little bit of advice to Ramos. This is the last thing the teams want at the start of the season, is a delayed start with tricky track conditions. Therefore the driver's strapped in the cockpits, just waiting for the off. So mechanics in on the grid, as coming a little bit later to the grid is the Team Parker Racing Audi R8, the hands of Callum McLeod. Fine third in qualifying. McLeod alongside Ian Loggie, a very welcome addition to the championship, and Callum, who is no stranger to the GTOpen paddock because he has raced previously with considerable success in the Euro Formula Open Championship. And his single-seater career took him all the way to GP3, whereas is so often the case, circumstance and finance worked against him. But McLeod, a real surprise in qualifying earlier on, and he could be a driver to watch as the race unfolds. So Callum McLeod heading to his third place on the grid. The British driver who, for those of you with long memories and furry anoraks, may well recall had his fierce rivalry with Porsche Works driver Nick Tandy during their British Formula 4 days. Both of them having taken their single-seater careers as far as they could now in sports car and GT racing. And both of them, as ever, towards the very front of whatever they compete in. So McLeod sharing with Ian Loggie this weekend in the Team Parker Audi. Ian, who has risen very quickly, is actually from the ranks of club racing in the UK, has made the switch out of sort of Porsche club racing into endurance racing, now making the step up to international competition. Raced last year to third place in the Bronc Plan Endurance Series Gentleman Trophy. This international GT sprint racing. Well, if you have just joined us, as the ticker at the bottom of your screen tells you, we have had the start delayed by 10 minutes. That's good because as the pit lane was open, we did have a brief shower, which seems to have abated almost immediately. It's a good opportunity to say that we would love to hear from you over the course of the season and over the course of today's race. If you do use Twitter, the easiest way to do that is to use the hashtag GTOpen. So hashtag GTOpen, get in touch with any questions. We'll try and answer them for you on air, because it's always good to hear from those of you at home watching what you're finding interesting, your thoughts on maybe how the race is going to unfold as well. So hashtag GTOpen, you use Twitter, is the easiest way to get in touch. So Alvaro Perent just making a final inspection of the McLaren. Miguel Ramos, not unsurprisingly, remaining firmly ensconced in the cockpit. Time for a few smiles from some of the mechanics. There is the bald-headed figure of Ian Loggy, just waiting to converse with Callum McLeod. And this is really where the experiences on the drivers comes to the fore, because the last thing they want is a delay like the one we have got. And the job of the team managers is just to do those final checks of the car, but also keep their drivers relaxed, make sure they don't tense themselves up or potentially even get overheated in the cockpit. Couple of deliberations over tyres. There is the McLaren at the back of the grid, you can see on the left-hand side of your picture. That is the new Cox Racing McLaren, being started by Nico Pronk. So here is Alessandro Balzan then in pole position in the Villorba Course Ferrari. And then second place, as we already said, is the Teo Martin Motorsport McLaren of Miguel Ramos. Ramos, will he win the championship this year? He's been runner-up for the past 2 seasons, and last year he had the most wins of anybody. Third on the grid then is Callum McLeod. Thumbs up from Callum. He's really got that Audi working well. Fourth for the tyre driver, Passin Lathoras. And Passin, 7th in last year's British GT Championship, but he did win one of the GTS races, of course, at Spa, if you cast your mind back to that slightly disrupted race. Very, very warm welcome back to the championship for Kessel Racing and Michael Broznicki. And Michael lines up in 5th position, a new driving partner for him this year in the form of Giacomo Piccini. But Michael has won races for several seasons in the International GT Open. 6th on the grid then for Duncan Cameron in the AF Course Ferrari, and Duncan will be handing over to Matt Griffin mid-race, and that's good to see Duncan smiling and giving thumbs up. He really does enjoy his racing, does Duncan Cameron. He's quite shy out of the cockpit. 7th on the grid is the new AERT car for Anton Neblitsky and Alvaro Barber, and it's the former Formula Renault 3.5 litre racer, the Russian Anton Neblitsky, who starts in the immaculate Lamborghini Gallardo. Very strong driver lineup as well. Baporo Motorsport return. Last year they were, of course, very competitive as the SMP Russian Bears, and it is Jose Perez Icart who starts. He is sharing with Emiliano Lopez. Perez Icart, one of the stars of last year's championship. 9th on the grid for Claudio Sadanovic, who of course had that little spin on the way to the grid. He shares with Ilya Melenikov, and it is the experienced German Sadanovic who starts. Another new team, Solaris Motorsport, Francesco Cini and Stefano Constantini. Constantini switching across from racing Ferraris. Cini, the reigning Euro V8 champion. So he's used to big, powerful Chevrolets. I think he could be a real surprise package as the season unfolds. The absolutely immaculate Swiss team, Maserati of ex-FIA Formula 2 racer and raiding Trofeo Maserati champion, Mauro Calamia. Thumbs up from Calamere. He is uniquely doing the whole race single-handedly this weekend. And then we have got the Lechner Racing Mercedes of Mario Plasciuta and Walter Lechner Jr. And it is Mario Plasciuta who is going to be starting, the Austrian driver we saw through occasional races last season, but then the Lechner team had a number of clashing commitments, but they are looking to race a full season this year in the International GTOpen. Then we move towards the latter part of the grid. Nico Prox in the new Cox Racing McLaren. And then very pleased to see the AF Course Ferrari of Raffaele Giammaria brought out the red flag in qualifying earlier on. He shares with Ezequiel Perez Compenac. Giammaria won the Italian GT Championship last year, but has raced with considerable success over the seasons in the International GTOpen after his Formula 3000 career in single-seaters came to a close. So after the various delays that we've had to getting this race underway, we are now just a couple of moments away from the cars being flagged off onto their green flag lap. Last opportunity to get a little bit of the circuit. So here is how they line, and with Balzan and Ramos sharing the front row, very, very strong front row to the grid. Row 2. Will Callum McLeod be able to translate the Audi's wet pace into the dry weather? And Passin Lathoras, consistency has always been the challenge for Passin. Row 3, Michael Brozaniski and Duncan Cameron, both of whom will hand over to very quick co-drive for the second half of the race. I think we can expect to see Jose Perez Icar coming on strongly from 8th, and Anton Lembliski and Alvaro Barber, a little bit of an unknown quantity how that car will perform over the race duration. Then Claudio Sazanovic and Francesco Cini, the Corvette, will relish the dry weather a lot more than the wet from earlier on. Mauro Calamere and Mario Plasciuta, and then Nico Pronk and Raffaele Giammaria, and we can expect to see the black and yellow car of Giammaria again making good progress as the race gets underway. The drivers just waiting for the countdown to continue, then they'll get the start-up signal. The last couple of mechanics will make their way from the grid. So 1 minute to go, and the engines get turned on ahead of the first race of the season. A handshake for Alessandro Balzan from the Vallorba course mechanic as the grid is cleared. We are seconds away from the cars being released onto their green flag formation lap. And then we are just a couple of minutes from the start of the International GTOpen season. If you have just joined us and you expect to see the race well underway, well, we had initially a delay of 5 minutes to give the drivers a bit more time to get some sighting of the circuit done after a wet qualifying. That then turned into another 10 minutes worth of delay because we had a very brief shower just as the pit lane opened. That has thankfully disappeared, and there are actually some peaks of sunlight coming through at the moment. So hopefully we'll be dry all the way through to the conclusion of the race as the cars head off on their green flag formation lap. So if you are new to the International GTOpen, to explain what we've got to look forward to, well, it's a 70-minute race. There is a mandatory pit window where they must come in and, with the exception of Mauro Calamere, make a driver change. That starts when we're 28 minutes into the race. It concludes when we are 42 minutes into the race. And new for this year, everybody is in the GT3 specification car. The organisers, I think, reflecting the fact that GT racing in Europe certainly really converging around the GT3 specification car. So that is essentially that single class of competition. But we then do have the GT amateur class as well, which is for the teams that don't have a professional driver in their lineup. Although, as we were saying at the top of the show, overnight we had the announcement of the new Cup class that's going to be introduced to the GTOpen from Silverstone onwards. Very high quality entry though that we've got here at Paul Ricard this weekend, and the drivers will be wanting to get a good result here for the championship because we have got 7 or so new cars joining the fray in Estoril, some of whom are going to be very, very strong. So the opportunity to get points on the board in this first of the 14 races of the season should not be missed. Don't forget, do get in touch through the race on Twitter, hashtag GTOpen, and do what we can to pick up your comments in the commentary box, much to the distress of my mobile phone roaming charges. As we go into the Lorber Course garage, and Nicola Bonucci watching on. Bonucci making the graduation from the Italian GT Championship this year. So there is the absolutely beautiful McLaren 650S, Vodafone livery car of Miguel Ramos and Alvaro Parent. Now, how will that car perform as the race unfolds? Great to see it going head-to-head with the always very well turned out Lorber Course Ferrari. And then to make it 3 different cars in the top 3 places, we've got the Audi of Callum McLeod. Watch for the progress of the Lamborghini Gallardo of Anton Neblitsky, and I think as well Francesco Cini in the Chevrolet Corvette. Also represented on the grid are Maserati and Mercedes. There is Mario Plasciuta, wheel of the Mercedes, as the drivers weaving around down the Mistral Straight. Paul Ricard circuit, probably better known these days as a high-tech testing facility, and those of you that keep a close eye on progress in the world of sports car and GT racing will have seen several of the World Endurance Championship contenders been testing here over recent weeks in readiness for the Le Mans 24 Hours, because the situation of the circuit means that it can run through the night. Also, what you've got as well is this very high-tech runoff area with the blue and red strips. The blue strips, high abrasion tarmac, which will slow the car down. The red strips, it's like going into a gravel trap or thereabouts. Very, very high abrasion tarmac. Flat spots the tyres, really slows you down, punishes you for the mistake, but prevents, hopefully, the car from making contact with anything a little bit more solid than that. So the field just beginning to form up side by side as they come towards the concluding stages of the formation lap. 70 minutes of action to look forward to. The thunder is about to roar here in Paul Ricard. As the field getting bunched up nice and early, in fact, behind the pace car. So it is the black Lorber Course Ferrari of Alessandro Balzan on the front row, alongside the silver McLaren of Miguel Ramos. Then it is the white, green and black Audi of Callum McLeod, and the red and blue Ferrari of Passing the Thoras. Probably be one of those 4 drivers that leads through turn 1. We're about to find out. They come out of the final turn. We wait for the red lights to go green and the season to get underway, which it does now, and away we go, sprinting towards the first turn. And Balzan's made a good start, so has Ramos, although Ramos just trying to squeeze out Callum McLeod as they're 4 wide, a little bit further down the pack on the brakes into turn 1, and it could be Passing La Thoras and Jose Perez Ricard who are going to make progress. Oh, and McLeod gets tipped into a spin. He's in the middle of the road. I hope they all miss him. They do indeed. But disaster for Callum McLeod. Early on it was contact with Passing the Thoras, and the Thoras could well lose 3rd place here to Jose Perez Ricard. Indeed he does. So great start from Ricard. He goes 3rd as it's Balzan who leads, and 2nd place is now Perez Ricard as he darts to the inside of Miguel Ramos. What a stellar start from Ricard. We thought he'd progress strongly. Also going well is the Maserati of Mauro Calamia. He is up into 6th position as they head out of the Virage d'École along the Mistral Straight for the first time. Balzan just getting a little bit of heat into his tyres. The battle to watch for, though, is the one for 4th. You can see Michael Brozanitsky in the black Kessel Ferrari pressurising Passing the Thoras as they get on the brakes for the chicane, which bisects the Mistral Straight now. And Calamia runs out wide, and that's why he's got Duncan Cameron and Francesco Cini tucked up right behind him on towards the Courbe du Cygne. And Perez Ricard wasting no time in getting towards the front of the field. Meanwhile, Duncan Cameron draws alongside Mauro Calamia, and in fact Cameron takes the place before they turn into the Courbe du Cygne. That's 6th place then in favour of Duncan Cameron. Calamia just behind him, then Francesco Cini in 8th through the Double Droit. So different angles of attack we've seen all the way through the weekend particularly the second apex. Meanwhile, the fight for fourth is well and truly alive. Broznicki all over the tail, passing Lathoras. Lathoras maybe just... Oh, and a problem for Perez Ricard. You saw Ricard shooting off the road then, and there he is. Now, was that just an out-braking problem, or is it something more serious? I think it's potentially a puncture, and Perez Ricard, having had that absolutely fantastic opening lap, concludes it by pulling into the pits. It just looked as if a tyre let go, possibly got caught on some debris. Meanwhile, we focus our attention on the fight for third. Lathoras defending from Michael Broznicki. Broznicki looks to the outside into turn one. He keeps his foot in and finds a way through. Lovely move that from Michael Broznicki. He really just thought ahead of himself. Passing Lathoras, drove smartly and gave him the space he needed. So the Polish driver Michael Broznicki up into third position. Broznicki, who finished 17th in last year's ELMS GTE class. Before that, had won a race in each of the three preceding seasons in the International GTOpen, and that is very, very sad to see. Jose Perez Ricard clambers out of the Ferrari. I just wonder if it was the suspension or something that gave way. We just caught a glimpse of it, didn't we, as he went into the turn. Sure, we'll find out in due course what the issue was. Let's well, there is McLeod's spin. Just gone out onto the marbles around as he went. Unfortunately, the momentum of the car took him out of the path of the oncoming traffic. Now here we see, oh dear me, yes, the suspension just completely lets go on the front right. And, well, very pleased that Perez Ricard gathered it all up and brought it back to the pits. That could have been a very nasty incident indeed. But unfortunately, it does remove one of the potential challengers from the race early on. So the order is Alessandro Balzan leads the way. Second place is Miguel Ramos. There is Miguel. Third, we've got this super fight between Michael Broznicki and passing Lathoras. It's the black Kessel Ferrari of Broznicki ahead of the red and blue AF Course Ferrari of passing Lathoras. Passing making the relatively recent transition across to GT racing, having raced for a couple of seasons in Asian Formula BMW racing. Is Lathoras close enough to give Broznicki a return favour into turn one? Broznicki breaks nice and deep and just manages to sustain that block defence. In fifth place then we've got Duncan Cameron. In sixth it's Francesco Cini. Up to seventh has come Raffaele Giammaria. And there you can see that battle behind. We've got some lovely racing early on here in Paul Ricard. A super fight for third place, a brilliant fight for fifth, as Broznicki just runs out a little bit wide. Here is the fight for fifth then. Duncan Cameron in the red and white Ferrari. Then it's the black Corvette of Francesco Cini and the black and yellow Ferrari of Giammaria. Raffaele Giammaria from the back of the grid, making very strong progress. Is the fight for fifth position. Fight for third on the brakes into the chicane. Lathoras ducks out of the slipstream behind Broznicki. Broznicki doesn't make friends with the apex. Now can Lathoras play that to his advantage as Francesco Cini to the side. Duncan Cameron, oh, that's very, very tight. They squeeze through and it's Raffaele Giammaria who is the winner. He gains the place, moves up into sixth. Although Cini will look to draw alongside as they sprint down the second section of the Mistral Straight. And there's a brilliant fight going on behind as well for eighth place between Anton Neblitsky and Callum McLeod. As Giammaria does manage to hold on to sixth position immediately, starts to apply the pressure to Duncan Cameron. Here's the Neblitsky and Callum McLeod fight. Callum McLeod recovering from that spin. Oh, there's barely any space there for Callum, but he tries to force his way past Anton Neblitsky in the Lamborghini Gallardo. Neblitsky, though, holds his place, and as they battle, they are actually beginning to close up onto the fight for fifth, which is now resolved in favour of Raffaele Giammaria. Out front, though, it's Alessandro Balzan who leads, as we're about 7 minutes in to the opening race of the International GTOpen season. So Michael Broznicki and Pascal Lathoras, this fight for third place is really quite something. As Broznicki just having to drive a wide car because Pascal Lathoras has found that following is much easier than leading, and he's asking all the right questions, and Michael Broznicki in all the right places. The problem being, because they're both in pretty much identical Ferrari 458s, the performance characteristics of the car are broadly similar around the lap. Second place, then we've got Miguel Ramos in the McLaren. Super fight for third, and one of the big questions is how quickly could Raffaele Giammaria get onto terms, as again Broznicki very deep into the chicane along the Mistral straight, but Lathoras hasn't quite been able to use it to his advantage on the way towards the Courbe d'Issy, but he might be able to now because he draws alongside Broznicki as they sprint towards one of the most notorious corners in European motorsport, and Lathoras almost goes for it, he can't quite do it, and so Broznicki maintains third place. Ferrari's just dipping down, almost the front splitter grounding on the tarmac as they get on the brakes into the double doigt before climbing uphill ever so slightly. We're on the fourth lap of the race. Don't forget the pit window opens when we've got 42 minutes left on the clock, so we've still got 20 minutes of this wheel-to-wheel battle to look forward to. Again, Broznicki just missing his braking point slightly in the Kessel Ferrari. Let's make friends with the apex, and it gives Lathoras that extra tenth of a second or so that he needs to mount a challenge. Come out of the final turn, across the line to complete lap 4, and already Broznicki covering the inside line. Lathoras tucked in right behind him, the AF Course Ferrari looking ominous, and Lathoras looks to the inside, then the outside, tries to show the dummy. Can he force himself to the inside as they come through the S's? Not quite. Really nice stuff this from Michael Broznicki, because he has got the Kessel Ferrari in all the right places at all the right times. And there at the back of the shot you see Raffaele Giammaria, who is closing in on this fight to the tune of 2 seconds a lap in 5th position. So this could very shortly become a 3-way fight for third. So they head through Virage d'École now, and once more along the Mistral straight. Meanwhile, this is Mario Plasciuta finding his way to the inside of Cleo Sadanovic, the pair of them doing battle over 11th position. All eyes on the fight for third, of course. So Lathoras again just trying to force those errors out of Michael Broznicki. Meanwhile, Francesco Cini and Duncan Cameron continuing their fight over 6th position, and I really feel sorry for the director in our TV truck in terms of which battle to show you here, because wherever you look on the track there are cars paired off and having the most ferocious dices. So through the double doigt, and this time around Lathoras just giving a little bit of breathing space to Broznicki, and I think with probably good reason, because Giammaria is still closing on the pair of them, and his job becomes that bit easier if the cars in front continue to fight with each other. There is the Tio Martin Racing McLaren of Miguel Ramos. Alessandro Balzan, of course, still leads in the Villorba Course Ferrari, as Francesco Cini finds a way past Duncan Cameron. They've got Callum McLeod and Anton Neblitsky closing up onto their tails. This is about to become a 4-way scrap for 6th place. Currently in 6th then is Francesco Cini, as they head through the final turn on to complete the 5th lap of the race. Here is a look at McLeod finding his way past Neblitsky, just forcing himself to the inside line. The double doigt gets the Audi squared off on the apex, and the place gained. Francesco Cini, likewise. Duncan Cameron momentarily leaving the door open. That was the only invitation the Italian needed. So we're almost 12 minutes in to this opening race of the International GTOpen year. Alessandro Balzan is our race leader. He's 14 seconds clear of Miguel Ramos in 2nd place. All eyes are on the fight for third between Michael Broznicki and Pascal Lathoras. Thank you very much for your company this afternoon. But then again, there are far worse ways to spend a Saturday than watching the sun beating down on supercars in Paul Ricard, and particularly when you have got some fantastic racing like we're currently enjoying. But here comes Raffaele Gianmaria. Gianmaria, who in his former 3000 days, of course, was on the podium in the Monaco Grand Prix support race. Very quick driver, and is continuing this prodigious rate of capture on the battle in front of him, of course, as we have seen time and time again. It's one thing to catch the car in front, it's quite another to find your way past it, and a mistake from passing Lathoras then into the first section of the Double Droit. You just saw the car understeering out. Meanwhile, we cut to the fight for 7th, and Duncan Cameron has been caught by a charging Callum McLeod. Both drivers headlights ablaze. McLeod, a repeat move from a lap ago, able just to force his way to the inside of Duncan Cameron through the second half of the Double Droit and up into 7th place then for McLeod. And of course, if you have just joined us, McLeod having that spin early on. And recovering up through the field, his next target is Francesco Cini in 6th. We're on lap 7 of the first race of the year in the International GTOpen at the Paul Ricard high-tech test track. Alessandro Balzan is our race leader. We are currently watching, though, the fight for 6th position. Or we were. We're now back to the fight for 3rd, and it's become a three-way scrap. It's the black Kessel Ferrari just ahead of the bright red AF Course Ferrari of passing Lathoras. Brozhenitsky in the wheel of the Kessel car, and then we've got the second of the AF Course Ferraris in this train. That is the black and yellow car of Raffaele Gianmaria, who has been closing in on the two cars in front at a rate of a couple of seconds a lap for the past few laps. Gianmaria, who had problems in qualifying, started from the very back of the grid and is making superb progress. It's giving Passing Lathoras the hurry up as well. Now, are we going to see something a little bit brave into the Courbe du Cygne? There is the AF Course pit gantry. There's the Kessel pit gantry. I think that the change would be more likely Gianmaria on Lathoras, but he doesn't try anything into the Courbe du Cygne this time around. They just begin to plunge down him to Double Droit. You can see Lathoras taking the tight exit, trying to pressurise the error from Brozhenitsky. Brozhenitsky, though, at the moment, responding to everything that Lathoras can throw at him. Passine now is in the slightly invidious position of having to drive with both what he can see in front of him, but also what he can see through his rear view mirror. It's giving Miguel Ramos the opportunity to really consolidate second place, at least for the time being. Lathoras looks to line up a move to the inside Brozhenitsky into the final turn. Brozhenitsky shuts the door at the last moment, and Lathoras, because he was parked on the apex, is able, whether deliberately or not, to actually slow Gianmaria. But now Raffaele Gianmaria draws alongside Passing Lathoras as they hurtle towards the braking zone for turn 1. Who's feeling bravest? I think it's just Gianmaria who makes the move stick and eases around teammate Passing Lathoras. That's great stuff, though, from the pair of them. Lathoras looking to fight back immediately, and now the question, of course, is going to be how quickly Gianmaria can dispense with Michael Brozhenitsky ahead of him. The pace that Gianmaria has been showing would suggest fairly rapidly, but it's the time-old adage, of course, in motorsport, that it's one thing to catch the car in front, it's quite another to find your way past it. Here is our race leader, though, Alessandro Balzan. Balzan just really making this look very straightforward. It's not, of course, but he has got a commanding advantage, 18.6 seconds at the head of the field. But don't forget, for the second half of the race, Balzan hands over to the relatively inexperienced Nicola Bonucci, the second place car, Miguel Ramos. Well, that is going to be Alvaro Parentes who takes over. So Balzan needs to build as big a buffer as he possibly can, particularly as we're only 11 minutes from the opening of the pit window. Another driver who wants to shine early on is Raffaele Gianmaria. He hands over to Ezequiel Perez-Companac, whereas Michael Brozhenitsky, he has got Giacomo Piccini waiting for him, the former Italian GT champion. Passing Lathoras, it's going to be Michele Rugolo. Again, another really hard charging driver. Oh, and problems, and that's Ramos who goes off in the Teo Martin Motorsport McLaren. What happened there for Miguel Ramos? Disaster, just as saying that the race could play into his hands, and contact then between Brozhnetsky and Raffaele Giammaria, and suddenly the top order of the race in the space of 2 turns is absolutely upended. A spin, uncharacteristically so for Miguel Ramos, and then that ghost of contact between Giammaria and Brozhnetsky. Well, there is Miguel Ramos. He's recovered and is back up to speed. There was a little bit of bodywork that was detached in the contact between the 2 Ferraris. Not sure whether that was the front splitter for Giammaria or the rear diffuser for Brozhnetsky. None of that's of any concern at all for Alessandro Balzan. I'm sure that the Valour team will have been on the radio saying that Miguel Ramos has had a spin, and what that means is that his advantage is exactly 30 seconds. Here we see it again. Ramos, oh, that's a very unusual one to have such a high-speed lose like that. And also, crucially, he came to a halt on the red super high adhesion asphalt, which would have probably done his tyres no good at all. That's the reaction from the Kessel pit wall to the incident between Giammaria and Brozhnetsky. Well, the net result of all that is that this man, passing Lathoras, is up into 2nd place, and it is momentarily a relatively comfortable one. There in 3rd place is Raffaele Giammaria, and then in 4th now is Miguel Ramos. 5th is Michael Brozhnetsky. In 6th place is Callum McLeod. 7th, Francesco Cini. 8th is Duncan Cameron. 9th, Anton Neblitsky. And it is Mario Plasciuta who completes the top 10. We've had 1 retirement so far, and that was Jose Perez Ricard after a scary suspension failure towards the concluding stages of the 1st lap of the race. Almost 20 minutes in, and how much drama do you want? Going to have maybe a little bit of a lull for a couple of laps, because the ferocious dicing has just led to 1 or 2 gaps opening up after that. Those bits of contact, but already Giammaria getting back onto terms with passing Lathoras. Giammaria gets on the throttle nice and early. Here we see another look at the move, and Giammaria just overcommitted, didn't he? He wasn't really trying to find a way through. I think it was more he got caught out by just how abruptly Brozhnetsky was slowing the car on the way into the turn, and there was nothing he could do. And so the Polish driver rotated, fortunately, I don't think with too much damage. Headlights ablaze on the car of Alessandro Balzan as we reach the 20-minute mark of the race. Balzan, who has led from the moment the lights went out in the Valour course entry, has now built up a lead of 29.6 seconds over passing Lathoras in 2nd place. In 3rd, it's Raffaele Giammaria. 4th is Miguel Ramos. But how long will Lathoras remain in 2nd? Potentially not very long at all, because Raffaele Giammaria looks to line up the move into the chicane along the Mistral straight. Can't quite do on the way in. Lathoras very late on the brakes. Oh, that's really smart driving, though, from passing Lathoras. Very slow through the apex, midway through the chicane. It slows Giammaria and delays just how quickly he can get onto the throttle, as now Giammaria looks to challenge Lathoras into the Courbe du Cygne. No way through there, and then Giammaria runs out a little bit wide over the blue stripes. They pick their way through the Double Droit de Beausset before very slight climb into this sort of technical section that brings the lap to a close. And of course, as Lathoras and Giammaria battle, that might just bring Miguel Ramos into the mix, although Ramos is some 2 seconds away from the pace he was running earlier on in the McLaren, which suggests that the red asphalt did its job in terms of stopping Ramos, but also maybe hurting his Michelin tyres just a little bit. But Ramos has got to just keep going for another 5.5 minutes, because when we've got 42 minutes left on the clock, that is the point at which the pit window will open. So across the line and into the 11th lap of the race, we are watching the fight for 2nd position. Don't forget, if you would like to get in touch with us, hashtag GTOpen is the way to do it on Twitter, and we'll pick up your comments and questions during the course of the race and all the way through the season. We have had a very, very lively start to the year, but now you can just see Lathoras beginning to miss one or two apexes, and that's giving Gianmaria to the chance to probe. Here is a replay of Francesco Cini missing his braking point by about an eternity. Fortunately, he rejoins without any harm done. Now, this is where Gianmaria challenged last time around. Down the Mistral straight, on the brakes, into the chicane. And again, Gianmaria comes out of the slipstream nice and early. Lathoras just moves the car to the middle of the road. That's all he needs to do. Now, can he get it stopped in time? Ooh, just about. Gianmaria, though, almost mesmerised into the same braking point. It's giving Miguel Ramos in the McLaren 650S the opportunity to close in as well. And just how beautiful is that McLaren? So into the Courbe du Cygne, Gianmaria almost probes to the inside. Lathoras can't quite do it. The pair of them fighting for second place now, 31.9 seconds back from the race leader Alessandro Balzan, as into the pit lane. I think on an unscheduled basis comes Mauro Calamia. So coming towards the end of the lap, still the fight for second continues. Miguel Ramos not really making any significant inroads into the fight for second. Along the start and finish straight, no change in the order in the fight for second, but I think the big news from this lap is the relative progress of Miguel Ramos, or it was Ramos very, very slow through the final sector. The first two sectors, he was almost a second quicker than the fight for second, but he gave away 1.5 seconds through sector 3, which is where you've got all the changes of direction. But it's still going to be a fascinating second half of the race to see how much ground Alvaro Parent can make up. Passing Lathoras has got the very quick Michele Rugolo waiting for him. Slightly more unknown quantity of Ezequiel Perez Compagnac, who'll be taking over from the Raffaele Gianmaria in the black and yellow Ferrari. As they head along the Mistral straight once more. Unfortunately, the shower that we had at the start of the race seems to have been the sole precipitation we're going to see. There's no particularly dark clouds on the horizon, as we can see from the commentary position, which means we're getting the race that we were really hoping for. A little bit further down the order, there is Francesco Cini in 7th place. He has got Duncan Cameron and Anton Neblitsky just beginning to snap at his heels a little bit. There is Neblitsky in the AERT, Lamborghini Gallardo, and he has got Alvaro Barber, former champion in the International GTOpen, poised and ready to take over. And we are just 2.5 minutes now from the pit window interchange starting. It's a 14-minute window. So strategy, although this is essentially a sprint race in the standards of GT racing, can still play a big part, because those that come in early can, they've got a slightly quicker co-driver, maybe make some progress, and the same goes back as well. So a couple of you got in touch with, so we're 2 minutes away from the pit window opening here in Paul Ricard, the opening race of the International GTOpen season. Thank you to those of you who've got in touch with us actually on Twitter. Just to confirm, all the drivers are on a single compound Michelin control tyre. It's a new tyre for this season, and at the moment it's working out very well. There is Mauro Calamia, as he is stranded in the pit lane. This is the fight for second place, and Alessandro Balzan leads by 34 seconds as Lathoras doggedly defends that second place from Gianmaria. He's still doing a resolute job in maintaining his place. And Balzan has set the fastest lap of the race with a 2 minutes 5.673. He's consistently lapping in the high 2 minutes 6 second bracket, low 2 minutes 7s. This battle behind for second place, they're in the 2 minute 8 second bracket, to give you some comparisons. So essentially Balzan 1.5, 2 seconds a lap quicker each and every time. And that's why the gap has opened up so quickly. And last time around, that 2:08.0 was actually passing Lathoras's fastest lap of the race. So it's giving Balzan the opportunity now. He leads by 34.7 seconds. But this has been really strong performance from passing Lathoras, because he's relatively inexperienced compared to Raffaele Gianmaria, but he knows exactly where to position the car defensively. Italy's helped somewhat by the fact that Gianmaria firstly made contact with Broznicki earlier, and therefore is probably feeling a little bit chastened, and secondly that they are teammates with the AF Core squad, and therefore if they make contact, I suspect that they'll both find out just what a long walk it is from the Paul Ricard circuit to Marseille Airport tomorrow. As now Gianmaria looks like a move around the outside, and finally it comes. That has been several laps in the making, and Gianmaria just getting the exit from the turn, able to find that traction to the outside and eases through into second place just at the point at which the pit window opens, but he's slow out of the final turn, and they're still side by side down the start and finish straight, and Lathoras does not concede the position easily. They flash past the commentary box, and Lathoras has got his nose in front. You can't tell that from the picture, but he did as he came past. But Gianmaria later on the brakes. Too late on the brakes for Gianmaria. Lathoras to the outside, and he goes back past him and takes second position. Reclaims the spot. Lovely dicing between the two drivers. But look in the back of your picture, Miguel Ramos, as a result, has caught right up, because that last lap was a 2 minute 10 seconds for Lathoras. And Gianmaria, 2 minutes 7 seconds for Miguel Ramos. The driver change is now on, and the first driver to come in is Duncan Cameron. He hops out. It is the Irish driver, Matt Griffin, who is waiting to take over. Griffin clambers in to the AF Course Ferrari. As we return to the action along the back straight, flashing his headlights, Raffaele Gianmaria, I don't think needs to make passing Lathoras aware that he's there, but this is possibly where team instructions from the AF Course team may come into play, because Gianmaria will know that Lathoras has got Michele Rugolo waiting to take over. So here's another look initially at the move where Gianmaria got past Lathoras around the outside, and then just a little bit too deeply onto the brakes there, Raffaele Gianmaria, and nothing he could do to stop Lathoras getting back through. Oh, but Lathoras on the ragged edge of adhesion now. Is he going to come in at the end of this lap to pass over to Michele Rugolo? I wouldn't be surprised if we saw Miguel Ramos pitching in to hand over to Alvaro Peret. And we've got news of a drive-through penalty for Raffaele Gianmaria. So Gianmaria in car 90 has been given a drive-through penalty, I suspect as a result of the contact with Michael Broznicki. And so that will add to the frustration as Lathoras dives pitwards, so does Gianmaria and Miguel Ramos. Now, is that Gianmaria for the drive-through penalty? Lathoras, I suspect, to hand over to Michele Rugolo. The same for Miguel Ramos to Alvaro Peret. Possibly Gianmaria may be passing the baton on to Ezequiel Perez Companac. No, not this time. So, to a halt. The two of the cars that were disputing second position, very, very rapid Alvaro Peret will be taking over for Miguel Ramos. That is the car of Peter Cox, who has just hopped in, assuming the control from Nico Pronk. Unsurprisingly, Alessandro Balzan will stay out a little bit longer. He can... The pit window closes when there's 28 minutes left on the race clock, so still another 11 minutes potentially before he needs to come in, and that plays itself out as 5 or 6 laps if he really wants them to try and hammer home his advantage. And this is always the point in these races where it starts to get absolutely fascinating, because the drivers that take on, the drivers that pit in early, their co-driver essentially is racing somebody that they can't see. And there's confirmation on the bottom of your screen that drive-through penalty was earned for Raffaele Gianmaria by contact with Michael Broznicki. No surprise, Michele Rugolo emerges from the pits ahead of Alvaro Peret. So here is Peret in the Aston Martin Racing McLaren, and he's pretty much exactly a lap behind the race leader, Alessandro Balzan. Now, Balzan, just for form's sake, I'm sure, would rather like to formally put the lap onto the McLaren. Not sure Alvaro Print particularly fight that. Oh, that McLaren does look a handful, doesn't it? Brent gets caught out a little bit. The car snaps sideways. So Balzan well on his way. It all depends on the relative pace of Nicola Benucci to Alvaro Prent. Here's another look at it. I really don't think Alvaro wanted to get the position, all the traction just snapping away from the Portuguese driver. As a result, Balzan completing the lappery as into the pit lane comes Michael Brosnitsky. It's Giacomo Piccini, the former Italian GT champion, who takes over as a result. Piccini, who has raced extensively in prototype and GT racing over several seasons, quick competitor. And another very rapid driver out to take over, Alvaro Barber from Anton Neblitsky, but Neblitsky I think will be heartened by the performance of the Lamborghini Gallardo. Having a little bit of problem there, aren't they, with the front left wheel? They can't get the wheel gun on. They do now, but they may have just slowed the pit stop a little bit. All the while, though, marching imperiously on is Alessandro Balzan. Second place now is Callum McLeod, because he is staying out a little bit more deeply into the pit window. In third is Raffaele Gianmaria. Pretty much everybody else, barring Mario Plasciuta and Claudio Zdanovic, have elected to make their pit stops. So emerging from the pits now comes Giacomo Piccini. Taking evasive action is Balzan, and that is a pass for position. Alvaro Prent to the inside of Piccini guarantees place in favour of Alvaro Prent, so he will be pleased with that. That's one less car to have to concern himself with. Not sure they've quite got the McLaren handling as they'd like it to. Ferrari Forfait, of course, a much more established car in competition at this level. Vasily Melnikov takes over from Claudio Zdanovic. We're pretty much halfway through the race and Alessandro Balzan leads. We are well into the pit window too, and the Villorba course driver, one of just a handful who has not ducked into the pits. He, I suspect, will be staying out as late as he possibly can. Villorba course, who were in the hunt for the title last year, going into the final event in Barcelona with their drivers Andrea Montermini and Nicolo Sciero. All new driver lineup for this season, with Nicola Benucci and Alessandro Balzan, but it is working very well for them at the moment. Second place is Callum McLeod, but this is going to be the car to watch over the conclusion of the race. It is the new Teo Martin Racing McLaren 650S. Miguel Ramos was running strongly in second place early on. If you just joined us, spun down to fourth, pitted in early to hand over to former British Formula 3 champion, former Formula Renault 3.5 champion, Alvaro Prent. And Prent works McLaren driver very closely attached to the factory. On his way there is Nicola Benucci, poised and ready to take over from Alessandro Balzan. But I think slightly ominously here, we are seeing that the pace of Prent is quicker than that offered up by Balzan. So Alvaro Prent has just done a 2 minutes 5.864. He's only a couple of tenths of a second away from the very best lap of the race. But crucially, that is 8 tenths of a second quicker than Balzan can currently circulate. But prior to the pit window, we were looking at the McLaren having a deficit of some 35 seconds. So doing the maths on that, really, we need to be seeing the McLaren in the second half of the race being, certainly Prent being about 1.5 seconds a minute quicker than Nicola Benucci. That feels like it could be quite a big ask, but we will see how that works itself out. can see already the McLaren getting up onto terms, trying to unlap itself from Balzan. So Michele Rugolo tucked in behind Peter Cox, the pair of them flying, although slightly out of position because essentially Rugolo is a lap ahead of the McLaren of Cox. So this isn't the battle for the lead of the race yet, but these are the two cars that you would expect to be fighting for the win as the race unfolds itself. So now, Alvaro Parente trying to do a little bit of an Eddie Irvine at Suzuka in 93, and that's unlap himself from the race leader and doing it in a slightly impish fashion. Beginning to just ask the questions of Alessandro Balzan. The last thing that Balzan wants is to get into a dice with a car that is essentially a lap down, and as a result he leaves a gaping hole and enables Parente to go through. Now does Balzan head pitwards on this occasion? Meanwhile, Bolton Jr. takes over from Mario Plasciuta in the Leckner Mercedes. Balzan on his way and has actually moved back ahead of the McLaren. So I think Parente possibly was ran a little bit wide, would be my guess, coming through the final turn. We didn't. So we have got Parente trying to unlap himself here from the Villorba Ferrari of Alessandro Balzan. Now he does so, and Parente with some clear air should fly. Last time round in turbulent air, he was kind of pinned to 2 minutes 6 seconds exactly as they head down the Mistral straight into the chicane. Meanwhile, pitting in towards the back end of the pit window is Callum McLeod. So we're into the closing stages of the pit window. Just 30 minutes left on the clock here in Paul Ricard, and Callum McLeod pits in to hand over to Ian Loggy in the Team Parker Racing Audi, which showed very strongly and would have been a little bit further up the order but for the first lap spin for Callum McLeod. It's Alessandro Balzan who leads. He is the only driver in the race who has not made his driver change. The other one, in fact, being Raffaele Gianmaria. Everybody else has been in. So I suspect it will be on this occasion. Balzan does indeed make his pit stop because there's less than a lap time within the driver change window. So into the pits now comes Alessandro Balzan. Now where is he going to feed back into the action when Nicola Bonucci is at the wheel of the Villorba Ferrari? Of course, what this what we'll then see is at the end of the next lap is the advantage that Bonucci has over the other cars in the race, and then we will understand the exam question facing the likes of Michele Rugolo and Alvaro Parente, because of those that have had their pit stops, it's Rugolo who is to the fore of the queue, ahead of Parente by about 6 seconds. Then it's Giacomo Piccini in the Kessel Ferrari, the Air Course Ferrari of Matt Griffin, and those cars still in contention. There is Ian Loggy. He has emerged from the pits. And Ian, who has very quickly progressed from essentially being a novice club racer up to international motorsport, has learned an awful lot along the way. Gets on the brakes through the gears, as here emerging from the pit lane then is the Villorba course Ferrari. Nicola Bonucci is still the race leader, of course, as Raffaele Gianmaria has come in. It's Ezequiel Perez-Compenac who will take over. Perez-Compenac, the reigning Ferrari Challenge Europe champion. So Perez-Compenac just getting strapped in to the Air Course Junior. Of course, that drive-through penalty has rather harmed the chances as Ilya Melnikov unlaps himself from Bonucci, which I think gives you an indication actually of it just takes a few moments for those Michelin tyres to come up to temperature, because we've seen all the drivers coming out of the pits just struggling a little bit through the first few turns. So the pit window has closed for the driver change. And Bonucci just needs to get up to pace steadily. We'll find out at the end of this, the 20th lap of the race, what the relative gaps are, and then sort of the rate of capture that's required. But to give you an indication, in clear air, we've just seen the fast lap of the race for Alvaro Parente at 2 minutes 4.83. And then Michele Rugolo, the car that he's directly catching, has just done his best lap of the race at 2 minutes 5.3. Oh, and a big sideways moment there for Nicola Bonucci. Being caught out just a little bit. And well, this is now when it starts to get very, very interesting. Bonucci coming to the end of the 20th lap of the race. He needs to keep it steady. He needs to stay calm. A spin would desperately hurt his chances. It might just be that Balzan was able to build him up enough of a buffer for him to defend over the remaining 26.5 minutes. So across the line goes Bonucci. Bonucci turns through the opening section. So we've got a little bit of a problem maybe for Alvaro Barber. Possibly just catching the end of a little bit of a lock-up. As Barber hurtles onto the Mistral straight, still waiting for the car in second place to come through. And there's something definitely wrong there with Alvaro Barber's car. Meanwhile, Michele Rugolo has come through in second place, 37 seconds back from Nicola Bonucci. So the order then, as we've got just over 25 minutes left on the clock, is Nicola Bonucci leads. 37 seconds is his advantage over Michele Rugolo. In third place, it's Alvaro Parente. Fourth is Giacomo Piccini. Fifth is Ian Loggy. Sixth, Matt Griffin. And then in seventh, Ezequiel Perez-Compenac. Alvaro Barber in the AERT Lamborghini. Something not right with the front right-hand side of the car. Smoke pouring off again. Whether it's just the tyre rubbing against the bodywork or possibly a little bit of brake smoke, I'm not sure. As here is Alvaro Parente, the fastest man in the race, as we always expected would probably be the case, but he has got a significant exam question ahead of him. There is the red Ferrari of Michele Rugolo, and Rugolo in second position has got an awful lot of ground over Bonucci to make up, and I think unless Nicola Bonucci has a real nightmare, despite the best efforts of Rugolo and Parente, it might be a little bit too much. I think a much more likely positions change is that of second place, because Parente is reeling in Rugolo to the tune of about a second a lap. As into the pit lane, not unsurprisingly, is Alvaro Barber. They're going to fit a new tyre to the car and send him back into the fray. So we've got 23 minutes and 3/4 left in the race. Nicola Bonucci, well, this could be interesting. Nicola Bonucci has completed his 21st lap. He's 33.4 seconds clear of Michele Rugolo, and Rugolo is only 3 seconds clear of this man, Alvaro Parente. Now, what does that mean in terms of lap times? It means that Bonucci last time did a 2 minutes 9.6 versus a 2 minutes 5.9 for Rugolo. There is a rueful Miguel Ramos, because if you've only just joined us, he spun the McLaren about a third of the way into the race out of a fairly secure second position, and the 10 or so seconds that has cost the team may well cost Alvaro Parent the opportunity to win this race, because Parent has got two tasks ahead of him. Firstly, it's to catch that red Ferrari of Michele Rugolo and pass it, and then the second task is whether either of those cars can close on Nicola Benucci. Benucci having a much better lap. Meanwhile, here is a change of position for 5th place as Matt Griffin eases his way past Ian Loggy. So Loggy, one of the gentleman drivers, not unsurprisingly, passed by the flying Griffin. So Griffin gains 5th position. Giacomo Piccini up the road may be a slightly sterner ask of Griffin. Here's another look at it. And Ian Loggy well offline, possibly actually giving Griffin the space nonetheless. So across the line this time has come Benucci as we follow the second place car, and then essentially a lap down. A bit of a spoiler here is Peter Cox in the McLaren. So Benucci has given us a 2 minutes 8.4, so that's substantially quicker from Nicola Benucci. What has Michele Rugolo got up his sleeve? Bearing in mind we've only got 22 minutes left, and it is well over 2 minutes a lap. They've got time probably for 11 or 12 more laps, depending on when they cross the line. So Rugolo goes through a 2 minutes 6.2 for Michele Rugolo, 2 minutes 5.3 for Alvaro Parent. So Benucci's lead is 31.2 seconds. And at that rate of capture, that feels like it's a little bit too much of an ask for Rugolo. He's going to do what he can. Rugolo, who was 13th in the GTS class of the GTOpen last year, one class victory. That doesn't quite give a fair election of Rugolo's pace, because he was often very, very quick. Alvaro Parent has got the real difficulty of trying to pick his way past the cars in front of him. I think with clear air, Alvaro Parent has possibly got a better chance than Michele Rugolo of chasing down Nicola Benucci. Meanwhile, Benucci has not had a brilliant first sector on this lap, and Rugolo was a clean second quicker than Benucci. They head through the chicane on the back straight, and Alvaro Parent was again a couple of seconds quicker than the race leader. So here is Nicola Benucci. He does a 38.0 through sector 2. It's a 37.6 through the second sector for Rugolo, 37.3 for Alvaro Parent. Oh, this is going to be extremely close. I think Benucci has got enough in hand as long as he doesn't fling the car up the road. Of course, that's barring any mechanical issues, but I think that's unlikely. So across the line, as the tension builds at Paul Ricard, 20 minutes to go. Benucci, his lap, a 2 minutes 8.6. So after the frenetic dicing that we had early on, this is now becoming the sort of chase race that we always enjoy in the International GTOpen. This is our race leader, Nicola Benucci. His advantage over Michele Rugolo is 28.7 seconds. Rugolo was 2 seconds quicker than on that last lap. Alvaro Parent was 3.3 seconds quicker over that last lap. And Parent is exactly 30 seconds back from our race leader, which means over the course of the 10 laps we've got remaining, Alvaro Parent may, it's a big may, just do this. The problem that Parent has got is how quickly can he clear both Peter Cox and Michele Rugolo. You suspect that Cox, in an act of McLaren solidarity and the fact that he's a lap down, probably won't make it too difficult for Parent. Michele Rugolo, because they're fighting over second place in the race overall, may add a slightly sterner challenge. Of course, Peter Cox there in the middle of that group of cars, off into unknown territory slightly. He split with the Writer Engineering concern, for whom he had been a driver for many seasons, and has decided to go his own way, moving away from Lamborghinis towards the McLaren mark. And At the moment, it's working pretty well for him in terms of the pace that he is demonstrating, but Alvaro Prent has just set the fastest second sector of anybody in the race so far. Meanwhile, we have a replay of Giacomo Piccini and Alvaro Barber getting a little bit too close for comfort. Some of Piccini's rear splitter goes flying. Now, I think we're getting into the territory possibly where Cox is starting to hold up Alvaro Prent, and you would imagine that if a phone connection to Woking could be established, it would be on the radio to Peter Cox saying, we can win this race with Prent, do not delay him, you're a lap down. At the same time, Cox has done a good job of hurrying Michele Rugolo. So across the line they come. The lap, by the way, for Nicola Bonucci was a 2 minutes 8.2. It's a 2 minutes 6.6 for Rugolo. It's a 2 minutes 5.3 for Alvaro Prent, who now must be getting extremely frustrated, I would suspect, behind Peter Cox, who does move aside as they head towards turn one. So now Prent is released to challenge Rugolo in the fight for second position. They are 27 seconds back from the lead of the race. There is Passim Lathoras in the AF Course garage. And Rugolo, not only is he a quick driver, he is not an easy man to overtake either. And that could have some bearing on it. The progress of Matt Griffin, by the way, he's a little bit quicker than Giacomo Piccini in fourth place. So that's a battle that might close up between now and the checkered flag. As down the Mistral Straight, we are on lap 25. This is the fight for second place. Thank you for your company this afternoon. This has been a really entertaining way to start the GTOpen season. And I think we are in for plenty of action to keep us on the edge of our seats through to the end of the race over the next 16 minutes. Now, where can Prent find the opening to overhaul Rugolo? Rugolo knows that he's coming, but surely both drivers will also be well appraised by the pit car radio that they daren't slow themselves down too much, because if they do that, it takes away any possibility of the race win. But Prent's now kind of got that golden window of potentially catching the car in front by surprise. And that is always a positive, because if you catch the car in front very quickly, you don't get mesmerised by what they're doing, and therefore you can force your way through. Meanwhile, a change of position for sixth place as Equil Perez Compenac moves to the inside of Ian Loggy. So Loggy slips down to seventh, Perez Compenac up to sixth, which is a pretty fair return from the back of the grid, and also a drive-through penalty. Here comes the fight for second place. And in terms of lap times, 2.2 seconds quicker than Nicola Bonucci. Bonucci's advantage 24.6 seconds. Where, if at all, can Prent find the opening? Got Peter Cox as well as the rear gunner. There's no risk of these cars being caught. The gap was down to just 0.4 of a second across the line. You can see Rugolo just the rear of the car, just moving a little bit. He's got Alvaro Prent all over his tail, and Prent finds the space to the inside and surely goes for second. He does. Can he get it? The stop pass completed. Indeed he can. Brilliant move that from Alvaro Prent. Applause from the mechanics on the pit wall. Stony silence and grim faces in the AF Course garage. But now we have got an absolutely royal chase on our hands, because with 15 minutes to go and 25 seconds to close up, Alvaro Prent is exactly 3 seconds a lap quicker than Nicola Bonucci. Bonucci is hovering in the mid 2 minute 8 second bracket, occasionally straying over that. Prent with clear road and no distractions. Well, we've seen him in the 2 minute 4s, so he could get the car going a second quicker per lap than it currently has. You can see that he is absolutely on the limit of adhesion. So climbing out of the Double Joie de Beausset and on to this technical section towards the concluding sector of the lap. Here is another look at the manoeuvre. Absolutely beautiful stuff. Stamping on the brakes, but more importantly, getting the car squared off on the apex. There's no opportunity as a result for Michele Rugolo to go with the switchback. And therefore, essentially, that's job done. thumbs up from the Teo Martin squad on the pit wall. But here is Nicola Benucci, and Benucci has rather dropped the ball on that last lap. He does a 2 minutes 9.2. Whereas Alvaro Perent, with the overtaking manoeuvre, it was a 2 minutes 6.4. The gap is 22.2 seconds. That is still a big, big ask of Alvaro Perent. But I would suggest it's not an impossible ask. So down the Mistral straight, arriving into the chicane, which sits in the middle of the straight, and I think much as it's wonderful that safety standards in motorsport have made such progress, it is a shame that the French motorsport's two finest straights, the Mulsanne straight and the Mistral straight, are now slightly neutered by chicanes. Meanwhile, Perent not really running away from Michele Rugolo, and I suspect Rugolo will be quite content to stay on Perent's wheel tracks. Of course, what we don't know is whether Alvaro has just overused his tyres. The Thoras family are probably, as we speak, crossing the Teo Martin team off their Christmas list. As Michele Rugolo, taking over from passing the Thoras, doing all he can. Let's close back in now. What sort of lap has it been for Nicola Benucci? It's not been a bad one, actually, from the Italian driver so far. Perent only a second or so quicker. And it might be that Benucci has got enough in hand. It really is going to require some inconsistency, and Benucci has upped his game and put in a 2 minutes 8.1. So Benucci is he's inconsistent, but when he's good, he is doing enough to probably maintain the buffer to give him the win. Alvaro Perent about to cross the line now to complete his 27th lap, and he does a 2 minutes 60, so it's 2 seconds. It's down to 20.2, but he now needs 2 seconds a minute to overhaul Benucci, depending on when Benucci crosses the line as well. So we've been focusing on the top three. In fourth place is Giacomo Piccini, fifth is Matt Griffin, sixth is Ezekiel Perez-Comtomac, seventh is Ian Loggy, eighth is Fulton Nectar, ninth is Stefano Constantini, 10th is Ilya Melnikov, and Ilya Melnikov and Claudio Sudanovic in that AF Course Ferrari well set to win the GTOpen class in the race. So we have got the fourth place car, Giacomo Piccini, under no particular threat, I'd suggest, from Matt Griffin. His advantage is 13.2 seconds, and Griffin's about 0.6 of a second a lap faster. So the Kessel Ferrari, Krosnicki and Piccini well on course for fourth place as we head into the final 10 minutes here in Paul Ricard. But again, as we watch the Kessel Ferrari, the black race leading Ferrari Nicola Benucci is having a little bit of a nightmare of a lap in relation to Alvaro Perent, because Benucci is almost 2 seconds slower through the laps so far. Here is the fifth place car of Matt Griffin, the second of the AF Course Ferraris in the race, and Matt, I think, will be looking forward to putting that car towards the very front of the grid in qualifying tomorrow morning. Here is Ezekiel Perez-Comtomac making a very fine debut in the International GTOpen. The Argentinian driver, something of an Argentine racing dynasty, Perez-Comtomac, and Ezekiel driving solidly in the 2 minute 7 second bracket, so he will be heartened with that. He is almost 10 seconds clear of Ian Loggy in 7th position. Gosh, you could watch a Ferrari 458, or indeed any of the cars in the International GTOpen going through the Courbe du Cygne all day long. It's not quite the spectating corner it once was, because the runoff has been progressively expanded ever since Mauro Baldi ended up in the crowd in the 1982 French Grand Prix, fortunately without injury to anybody, other than massively elevated blood pressure for all involved. And now you've got an awful lot of runoff space, and that part of the circuit is not really accessible to spectators. So that last lap for Bonucci was a 2 minutes 8.8. Alvaro Prent did a 2 minutes 6.3. The gap then at 17.8 seconds, and that now feels insurmountable. I just wonder whether Alvaro Prent got the very best out of his Michelin tyres, because he's now got Michele Rugolo just starting to come back at him. And in fact, the battle for second position, you might well suggest, is not quite sorted. Here's the 8th place car of Walter Lechner, having taken over from Mario Plasciuta. And Walter Lechner Jr. continuing again that family tradition. The Mercedes always immaculately prepared, and he's got a little bit of battle in his hands here, because Stefano Constantini in the Corvette, not too far back, there is Constantini, and then behind Constantini is Ilya Melnikov in the AF Course Ferrari. So Stefano Constantini we saw last year in the Ombre Course Ferrari. Quite a big accident, of course, if you recall, in Jerez. Left him with a little bit of a back injury that put him out for a couple of rounds. Hopefully he'll find the Corvette a little bit more to his taste. And again, the Solaris Motorsport Corvette is a team and a car that I think we can expect to see progressing up the grid as the season unfolds. So we've got just under 7 minutes left in the race. And at the moment, the positions, with the exception of probably second and third, reasonably stable. Again, though, Alvaro Prent, the 29th lap, a very good one. 15 seconds his deficit to Bonucci, but for another 3 or 4 laps, and also, as I'm sure Miguel Ramos would be telling you, but for that spin. So there's the Kesselfro Piccini. He's just ahead of the AERT Lamborghini of Alvaro Barber, but of course don't forget that Barber had that problem with the front right tyre that necessitated an extra pit stop. So Barber essentially a lap down, circulating in 12th place. It's good to see the Kessel Ferrari squad back with a full-time entry to the GTOpen this year, and going so strongly. So here's our race leader, Nicola Bonucci, as he heads out of the Courbe du Cygne on the way into the Double Joie de Beausset. And Bonucci is, depending on, I think, going to be going into his anti-penultimate lap here, so we should squeeze 3 more laps out of this race. And that would require Prent to be about 3 seconds a lap quicker, probably to have any chance. So Bonucci coming to the conclusion of lap 30. What sort of lap has this been, by the way, from our race leader? It is a, as we wait for him to break the timing beam, it's a 2 minutes 9.2 from Bonucci. I think he's safe, but he is possibly playing with reasonably fine margins here. What he certainly can't afford to do is make any sort of error. Let's imagine that his Michelin tyres will be feeling fairly worn out by now. But the Valourba course team always seem to get their car set up quite sympathetically. It never seems to, it's possibly as well with their driver selection, never seems to be overexerted in the way that you see some of the other teams and how they are running their cars. Anyway, Bonucci's advantage over Prent is 12.1 seconds. Yes, and 4 more laps, and it probably would be advantage Prent. As it is, Bonucci, I suspect, is going to win this race by about 4 or 5 seconds. You can see just how hard Alvaro is trying, though, in the Theo Martin McLaren. 3rd place for Michele Rugolo, and Rugolo is only a second back from Alvaro Prent. That battle is not resolved yet. So Rugolo seesaws at the wheel. Anxious faces on the Valourba course pit wall. So here is our race leader, Nicola Bonucci. We are into the concluding stages of the first race of the International GTOpen season. We've got probably 2 laps to go at the end of this one. And Nicola Benucci's advantage is 12.1 seconds. Alvaro Parent and Michele Rugolo, post-pit stop, have whittled it down by 20 seconds. And I think if we had time for 4 more laps, we'd be looking at a very different result. As it is, Nicola Benucci has driven, I think, possibly to the perfect pace that he needed to. This has been a reasonably smooth lap, a 2 minutes 9.2 for Benucci. He goes into the penultimate lap. And will he claim victory on his International GTOpen debut? Here comes Parent. He is 8.6 seconds back, and Alvaro Parent has suddenly found the pace at 2 minutes 5.7. Gosh, you know what? It may just be on. It really depends if Benucci has been backing off and can up the momentum, because at 4 seconds a lap, that rate of capture, it could get very difficult. Meanwhile, we're likely to see a change for 9th place, because Stefano Constantini has been caught by Ilya Melnikov. And Melnikov, who finished 9th in last year's Italian Porsche Carrera Cup, tucked up behind Stefano Constantini, and is Melnikov of a mind to go for the brave one into the Corp d'Issy. Meanwhile, a problem for Ian Loggy. Oh, that's such a shame for Loggy. He slows, he gets passed by Walter Lechner, and is he going to be... Yes, he gets passed by the battle between Melnikov and Constantini too. Stefano Constantini moves across, covers the inside line, Double Droit de Beausset, then begins to climb up into the sunshine, which is finally peeking through. And now Melnikov looks, it's Constantini who tries to shut the door. That's very close. Constantini runs out wide, but Ilya Melnikov makes the move stick. Great stuff from Melnikov. The Austrian driver gains the position. And so that is, by the time it's all played through, going to be 8th place for Melnikov after the demise of Ian Loggy. So across the line they go into their penultimate lap of the race. I suspect, given that Melnikov reeled in quite a big gap on Constantini, provided he doesn't drive with his mirrors, he should be able to ease clear. Here's another look at it, just forces Constantini to understeer out wide and gets into the gap that Constantini wants to fill. Nothing Stefano can do. Meanwhile, Ezequiel Perez-Companac maybe just pushing the limits a little bit too hard. Such a shame to see Ian Loggy retiring so late on in the race. A real pity, as the Team Park Racing Audi had been showing so strongly. And so the car somewhat forlornly rolls to a halt. Inspection already underway at the rear of the car. Meanwhile, we are into the final lap of the race, and the advantage for Benucci going into it was 5.4 seconds over Alvaro Parent. Well, Parent has worked something of a miracle, but when we saw that shot of Miguel Ramos in the pits mid-race, you could just see on Ramos's face that that spin he knows has cost them. In 3rd place, Michele Rugolo still going strongly, and Parent a whole second quicker than Benucci through Sector 1. He really is flying, but Benucci, whether or not the team have been telling him about the rate of capture, I don't know. I suspect they're probably not on the radio now. They just are willing this last lap to come to a close, as along the Mistral straight, headlights ablaze for Nicola Benucci unless he makes a fairly catastrophic error. He's got enough in hand, despite the fact that through the first 2 sectors, Alvaro Parent has been exactly 2 seconds quicker. And it has been a real treat to see one of the world's top GT drivers in such fine form. Theo Martin team. Theo Martin Motorsport team on the pit wall, waiting for their car. Nonetheless, 2nd place on its GTOpen debut for the McLaren 650S is a pretty fine return, but it is going to be victory in the opening round of the 2015 International GTOpen for Alessandro Balzan and Nicola Benucci and the Villorba Course Ferrari team. They take the checker flag and win the race. 2nd place, just 2 seconds back for Alvaro Parent. Miguel Ramos and Teo Martin Motorsport, and third for AF Course Ferrari with Michele Rugolo and Passin Lathoras. The top three in the end separated by just 4 seconds. Thoroughly enjoyable race to kickstart the season. Had all the ingredients that we enjoy. There's across the line for 4th place, Giacomo Piccini and Michael Broznicki in the Kessel Ferrari. Very strong 4th for them. And 5th for Matt Griffin and Duncan Cameron in the AF Course entry. Here is the car due to finish in 6th position, Ezequiel Perez-Compenac and Raffaele Giambria. The AF Course Ferrari has certainly had its adventures today, bringing out the red flag in qualifying, starting from the back of the grid, then that drive-through penalty. But nonetheless, 6th position, a fine return on their afternoon's work. Again, but for that drive-through, that car would have potentially been in the fight for 5th. So celebration time for Bonucci and Balzan, Florber Course Ferrari team, but slightly unusually for an International GTOpen weekend, because this is such a full programme of sport races. Qualifying for tomorrow's race hasn't yet taken place. That's going to be first thing tomorrow morning, so the work of the weekend is really only half done. Not that's of any concern right now for Balzan and Bonucci, whereas it's normally the case that we know who's going to be lining up where. We don't today. So look at the final result then. Balzan and Bonucci win it by 2 seconds for Ramos and Perent, with Lathoras and Rugolo completing the podium. Alvaro Perent setting the fast lap of the race. 4th for Broznicki and Piccini, and then 5th Cameron and Griffin. Victory in the GT AM class for Claudio Sadanovic and Ilya Melnikov, so congratulations to them, and also on a very fine 8th place just behind the shooter and Lechner. And then Francesco Cini and Svane Constantini in 9th, Peter Cox and Nico Proc completing the top 10 after an action-packed race. Fortunately, we did lose 1 or 2 of them along the way, in particularly Jose Perez I cut that scary moment early on. So into Parc Fermé for our race winners. Michele Rugolo handshakes with the AF Course Ferrari team. Is a super performance from Rugolo, and great to see him really fighting at the front of the field again, which is always nice to see. So just rolling to a halt. Nicola Bonucci, Sandro Balzan, I'm sure will be waiting to congratulating the Villorba Course Ferrari team. The perfect way for them to start their season, and they are really delighted with that, and quite rightly so. Bravos all around. And Bonucci doing very well to keep a level head after Alessandro Balzan built up a significant advantage over on. It was then Bonucci had to stem the tide of the rapidly encroaching McLaren. 2nd place, great reward for the Teo Martin Motorsport team. It could have been more, but for another lap of the race, it possibly would have been. And so Alvaro Perent has driven the wheels off it as he hops out. Fastest lap, fine reward for his afternoon's work. Smile from Miguel Ramos. Kelly Rugolo just debriefing a little bit on his progress. Very shortly we'll be able to head down to Parc Fermé to hear from our race winners before they get marched on towards the podium. Always such a nice celebratory atmosphere in Parc Fermé at the end of any race from the International GTOpen as well.
Joan, ¿cómo estáis? Gracias.
Alessandro Balzan, Nicola Benucci. Great first race, great win. How was it?
It was great. I want to thank Villorba Corsa because the car was crazy. The first stint was really fast, and Nicola did a great job. He was having he's pushing guys behind him that were coming really fast, but he was really nice and easy for him. And we got this first win. We really want to thank everybody because we decided to have the Open GT like 2 weeks ago, and to start with the first win is a great thing.
It's the best way to start.
Yes, I'm so happy because Alessandro did a fantastic first stint of the race, and then I need to control the opponents. It was not easy, but it's done, so I'm so happy.
Well done, guys. Podium now.
Thank you.
So let's take a look back then at the highlights of a thoroughly entertaining race. And from the outset, it was Alessandro Balzan who jumped into the early advantage as Miguel Ramos was busy defending from Callum McLeod into turn one. I'd like to report they made it through cleanly. They didn't. McLeod just got edged out and rotated in front of the pack. Fortunately, he was avoided by everybody else. Star of the first lap was Jose Perez Ica, who was absolutely flying up to second place until that happened to his front right suspension. And unfortunately, that pitched the Spaniard out of proceedings. Rafael Giamira was flying from the back of the grid. Unfortunately, that over-exuberance tapping Michael Broznicki into the spin led to a drive-through penalty for Giamira, who spent most of the first half of the race embroiled in a fairly entertaining scrap with his AF course teammate Passin Lathoras. As ever in the International GTOpen, the pit window turned the race on its head, so whilst Ezequiel Perez-Compenac made progress up past Ian Loggy, out front Nicola Benucci was maintaining the lead from Michele Rugolo. Navarro Perent snatching second with that fantastic manoeuvre on Rugolo. However, despite the pressure, despite the very rapid rate of capture, it was Nicola Benucci and Alessandro Balzan who won the opening round of the International GTOpen by just 2 seconds from the Teo Martin Motorsport duo of Alvaro Perent and Miguel Ramos, with AF courses Michele Rugolo and Passin Lathoras completing the rostrum. Ilya Melnikov and Claudio Sadanovic were our GT-AM trophy winners. So time to get the drivers up onto the rostrum. Lathoras and Rugolo in third place. Our runners-up, Miguel Ramos and Alvaro Perent. And our race winner, Nicola Benucci and Alessandro Balzan. Congratulations to them. Really enjoyable way to start the season. Some great dicing, some fantastic individual performances. And Villorba, of course, the winning team. And then we will have our GT-AM winners in the form of Claudio Sadanovic and Ilya Melnikov. For AF course, on to the podium. The Italian national anthem ringing out at the Paul Ricard circuit in honour of Scuderia Villorba course, and then drivers Nicola Benucci and Alessandro Balzan, winners of the first round of the 2015 International GTOpen. So on with the presentation of the trophies. Third place, Michele Rugolo and Passin Lathoras. Runners-up, Miguel Ramos, Alvaro Perent. Race winners, Bonucci and Balzan. And that's Philippe Mussati, the Customer Racing Director, Michelin Motorsport, who is doing the honours and also will be presenting the winning team trophy to Scuderia Villorba course. I think it's worth saying as well what a success the Michelin tyres have been on their International GTOpen debut. The Gentleman Trophy winners, then Klaus Stanvich and Ilya Melnikov. So with the presentation, the trophies complete, it's time for the photographs and then to let rip with the champagne on the podium, which means it's time for myself, Ben Evans, to say thank you for your company this afternoon. We'll look forward to seeing you tomorrow for the second round of the International GT Open.